That's what I'm going to be excited to see, and that's why I want to get into this game and really start breaking it down.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really good supporting Pokemon on both of these teams, and some really interesting strategies that might have to be executed, knowing that some Pokemon help out Pokemon on the other team. Chinwei is going to kick things off with that Landorus and that Grimmsnarl, and for Jira, it is going to be that Groudon and that Regieleki. So already the sun is going to set on this battlefield, as we also see the Intimidate come out from the Landorus to drop that attack of that Groudon.
What's interesting here is that if you bring the Landorus, you usually want to Dynamax it. So if you want to Dynamax it, that probably means you've left the Venusaur in the back, and you're not going to be wanting to try and get that in and Gigantamax it. That could be a bit of a miss from Chinwei's side. If he doesn't have that Venusaur, was probably looking at it thinking, yeah, I really would have loved to get that Vine Lash down, but I didn't bring it. So could be a bit of a, kicking yourself moment there if you're Chinwei. But Grimmsnarl Landorus Therian is not exactly a bad pairing to have either, especially when there's a Regieleki over on the other side of the field. That Regieleki does not want to be on the field if an Earthquake is coming out, or even a Dynamax move from something like this Landorus. So could be a tricky one for Jira to navigate in this turn. Don't see many convenient answers to the Landorus on the field right now, and if one of those answers is a special attack, that's just been reduced in power.
Yeah, Regieleki will be able to Volt Switch here. Gonna go back to its Pokeball, and let's see what Jira decides to bring out next. It is going to be that Clefairy, so Friend Guard back in action here for Jira's team, and that is gonna help out a lot when you consider the fact that Jira might be taking a bit of damage coming in from that Landorus, but we are going to see the Swords Dance first. Rock Slide connects with both, but doesn't do very much.
Nah, Rock Slide, not really the damaging attack that we've seen it be in previous years and formats. Just not able to put down pressure early on the Groudon or even the Clefairy, and the Friend Guard making that look even worse. But that's one of those things you have to think about when you're playing a Landorus team. What do you put with it? How do you let it roam free with these Earthquakes, throwing them out all over the show as you want? I mean, Max Quake is something that, is being hovered by Jira. We opt for the Groudon. Maybe the Landorus needs to start looking at that one too. That said, anything that comes out from Jira's side of the field right now is going to be even weaker because of both the Reflect and the Light Screen being set up.
Precipice Clades is going to at least connect onto the Grimmsnarl. Not going to affect that flying type Landorus, but at least that Grimmsnarl is now out of the equation for Jira, as hey, Landorus gets out of there too by using Fly.
It gets out of the way of a very important attack, the Clefairy revealing Icy Wind. Not something I've seen on every Clefairy as people team build for this format, but getting away from that, really, really helpful there. And this is why the Landorus has been holding on and hasn't been Dynamaxing. There's confirmation that the Venusaur is available for Chinwei, and being able to bring that in and say, you know what, thanks for the sun, thanks for activating my chlorophyll. Really going to take advantage of that and just start attacking first. So really could be a good game for Chinwei. If something like that GMAX Vine Lash can get put down, I mean, yes, the Clefairy could maybe pull it away a little bit, but the options to retaliate are limited from this Groudon.
Venusaur can do quite a bit here. Let's see how Jira decides to kind of navigate this, and also, what was the target of that Fly? I am very curious.
The target of the Fly, I mean, neither of them are exactly what I describe as premium targets for the Fly. But at least it gets you out of the way of the Icy Wind. And there we go. There's the Gigantamax on the Venusaur. This is probably what Chinwei's been waiting for. Yeah, it did cost you the Grimmsnarl to get it done, but at least you got it in free of damage. So really well set up there, and being able to, maybe force Jira's hand a little bit here and force the Dynamax onto the Groudon. I mean, you don't always see it that way. I think Jira's team does lend itself to be a little more Groudon Dynamax friendly than some of the others we've seen. But, that might not be the premium option and could just be taking a whole lot of damage. Clefairy, though, ooh, the Protect, not the Follow Me.
Yeah, the protect here, maybe you're trying to read that Chinwei is going to go after the Clefairy anyway, but it is the Groudon that is the recipient of that G-Max Vine Lash, which is super effective, is going to deal a ton of damage, but the Max Quake is going to go through into Venusaur. But, a pretty hefty chunk back. But the special defense boost might not be super helpful.
But that's why the light screen and reflect are important, because that means that you just don't end up taking enough damage to get cleanly knocked out. The Groudon bot so low. I thought that was going to get it. I wasn't able to do the numbers quickly enough as I saw the fly damage land. But that means Groudon is only around for one turn. That means you're guaranteed to at least miss some of your Dynamax turns, which as we've seen already over the course of today, and for anyone who's been playing these formats, in Sword and Shield, those Dynamax turns, you want all three, and it's harder to win when you don't get all three of them. This Venusaur has access to Max Guard as well, can just keep itself super safe in this last turn, and maybe the Landorus takes advantage of that, just trying to go after the Clefairy. I think the fly double target into the Groudon, really important here.
Well, the follow me, that's why the Clefairy is used Protect that turn before, so we can be around to protect the Groudon now. As we do see the Max Rock Ball come through, not going to be able to pick up that Landorus, but it was a great read from Jira to recognize that Max Guard coming out from Chinwei's Venusaur. But that's the last attack for that Groudon.
Yeah, the Groudon was doomed at the end of the turn anyway, so getting some damage down, better than getting none down, really, really important. Landorus getting out of the way again with the fly, maybe just trying to avoid as much as possible over the next couple turns. Jira, yes, does manage to get some residual damage of his own down, being able to get some Sandstorm Chip going in there as well, but overall, that's probably going to be quite a costly loss for Jira. The Glastrier, though, is a big swing. The Glastrier applies fantastic pressure to both Pokemon on Chinwei's side of the field, and they're low as well. You don't even need big damage. Low means you can knock them out through the reflect here, and then you'll be in a really good position.
Yeah, the one thing that's a little bit risky is Icicle Crash, which is only 90% accurate. So Glastrier is going to have to make sure these attacks connect. Otherwise, Jira's still in a pretty sticky situation.
They've got to be landing, but at least you get to buy some time by having your Clefairy take the attacks in lieu of the Glastrier for the next couple of turns. That said, though, the fly is coming down, and that's going to be a good amount of damage. So close!
1 HP! It's like there was an invisible focus sash. It's still gonna get knocked out because of the Max Rockfall, but that's so clutch for Jira, so that this Glastrier can't get off this attack. Icicle Crash is gonna connect.
Yeah, I think Chinwei was expecting that the fly from the Landorus was going to be able to get that knockout, and then the Max Rockfall would be able to, of course, going off the Weather Ball, cycling through all of that fun. Weather Ball becomes changing type to match.
It becomes everything.
And then that type becomes the Max move. It's a whole process, but you really wanted that on the Glastrier as well, so not exactly what you wanted. Yes, you finally managed to get the knockout on the Clefairy, but at what cost? Because part of that cost as well is giving over a chilling Nay boost to the Glastrier. You got rid of the Landorus as well. I think the Landorus was the priority target right here because of the Regieleki in the back. So the Regieleki feeling a whole lot better, knows of course the Venusaur's low and done with its Gigantamax turn, so it's maybe saying I'll deal with the Venusaur. Something's just got to deal with this Zacian, and once you get through that Zacian, the Venusaur suddenly a bit limited now, I'd say. Of course, the residual damage is there, and Regieleki going for it.
There's the rising voltage. Ooh, it's not gonna be enough to knock out the Venusaur. Zacian moves next. Behemoth Blade has been locked into, and the Glastrier is not going to take that at all, as it is super effective and a ton of power behind that swing. So just a quick Sludge Bomb here coming out from the Venusaur, and it goes down just like that with a critical hit.
Yep, that was a real quick turn of events from Chinwei. Just saying, you know what? I don't even care about the fact I don't have Chlorophyll available. that's not really a problem. I've still got Zacian, which is the fastest thing on the field. I'm just going to start knocking you out. And once that was revealed in the back, I sort of looked at it and thought, well, how do you get around that? There's no real way around it. And Chinwei just putting a really commanding stamp on the end of that game. I think there was maybe a couple too many defensive options coming through from Jira's team. The Clefairy did buy a lot of time, but it didn't help its partner get enough back and get enough done. So a really good game, and I think Chinwei, struggled a little bit early on, but being able to get that Venusaur in the sun, that's all you really need at times.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, sure, the weather might have switched around here or there, but there was definitely a lot of momentum that Chinwei was able to capitalize on. And I can't wait to see what happens in this game number 2. We do have Chinwei up 1-0 in this best of 3 series between him and Jira. Let's go ahead and see what's going to happen next. See the leads here. We've got Venusaur and we've got Landorus for Chinwei, and Jira is starting things out with that Groudon and Clefairy.
This is a really good lead for Chinwei. This is exactly what he wants. This is exactly what he wanted. And he kind of learned from game number 1, I guess, right? He's like, oh, is the Groudon going to come in right in the lead? Cool, I'll just bring the Venusaur to get things going. I'll say the Grimmsnarl for a little bit later. Of course, the Grimmsnarl's impact can't be underestimated with those screens that it set up, and light screen, of course, the combination that's been ever so popular for so long. But this game could get quite nasty quite quickly, because guess what? That Venusaur's already got Chlorophyll set up, doesn't have to do any switching on his own side, doesn't need to bring in his Torkoal or anything like that. So now this is going to be a Venusaur-led game. The Venusaur definitely looking to cause problems, definitely faster than everything on the field right now. Yeah, the Clefairy could hold it up with something like the Follow Me, but at the same time, I think there's plenty of ways you can put enough damage down to maybe scare the Clefairy off. And speaking of being the fastest thing on the field, Chinwei's just decided to have the other fastest thing on the field. So his pairing now is just going to be able to try and run over Jira's side of the field.
Yeah, I think this is what we were talking about at the very beginning of this particular match, is the fact that sure, yeah, Chinwei has the Torkoal, but you don't really need to bring the Torkoal if your opponent's gonna set up the sun for you. So Chinwei definitely taking advantage of that. Clefairy will go for Follow Me here just to try to draw some attention away from his Groudon, but the G-Max Vine Lash comes through, and that is a lot for Jira's team to have to deal with.
That's a lot of damage to trade, onto something like the Clefairy. I mean, the Clefairy is easily going to be able to get knocked out in the next turn, maybe able to redirect another attack away to keep the Groudon safe. But the G-Max Vine Lash coming through nice and early means that, everything for the next 3 turns after this one is going to be receiving that chunk of residual damage. I mean, it's so much more than any other residual damage effect we've had. It is some of the most impactful moves in the game. The effect is one of the most impactful, just because it's not like it wears away a little bit. No, it takes away huge amounts of health between turns. Clefairy buying time, yep, that's going to be quite wise, but I think it's going to get knocked out immediately and make this Groudon a little bit easier to deal with. While the Clefairy's buying time, though, the Zacian's setting up.
Yeah, the Zacian's just going to go ahead and go for a substitute here. So very good play coming out from Chinwei to preserve both of his Pokemon. Venusaur not taking anything, and Zacian takes much less than it would have if it hadn't used that substitute. All while still just allowing that residual damage to chunk through the Pokemon that Jira has on the field right now.
Just look at how much damage it does. A ferocious beating really is an understatement. It just means at the end of this turn, if the Clefairy is still on the field, yeah, it's going to get knocked out. It also means now the Groudon's taken 2 turns of that. It just means that the Groudon, even if it does decide to Dynamax, which was something kind of important in game number 1, if it does decide to Dynamax, it's going to be pretty low and a lot more manageable when it comes to dealing with that. So really like this play from Chinwei in turn 1. Just go after him with the G-Max Vine Lash. Allow the Swords Dance to go up. The Swords Dance really won't be a problem if you just get to knock it out immediately. And this defensive play from the Groudon could be a bit of a problem. Maybe the Groudon just trying to wait on the field to bring something else in. Max Ooze. I like that from the Venusaur. It's your last turn of Dynamax. May as well get as many boosts as you can, and a special attack boost here could be important for this Venusaur.
Absolutely. It's already been doing a lot of work, but may as well be able to do more so even outside of that Gigantamax. And Jira's been playing it so safe that take a look at how low that Groudon is getting already when it comes to its HP pool. I don't know how much longer it's really going to be able to stick around on the field.
It can't take any attacks. Not from the special attack boosted Venusaur now, and the Zacian are both going to be able to pick it up. So this Groudon's kind of done for, I think. It's going to be moving after both of them as well, especially while the sun's set up for Chlorophyll. So now this next turn's really on Regieleki to try and get as much done as possible. Maybe wants to try and cause some problems and allow some room for this Groudon to play. But after that Max Ooze and the fact that Zacian is Zacian, we've seen how much damage it does with Behemoth Blades consistently over and over numerous tournaments and numerous games now. There's just really not much this Groudon can do, so the Groudon does have to be careful. The Zacian being quite respectful here, though, with the Protect, even though I think it's fair to say Chinwei's in a very well-off position.
Well, the Electro Web is going to at least lower the speed of this Venusaur, but is it enough? Is it enough?
I think he's really expecting to be able to deal with the Venusaur. That's the big problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. The Precipice Blade is going to be able to move, and it does take out the Venusaur. That's huge.
Yeah, getting rid of that Venusaur, really problematic. Landing that Electro Web, really, really important from this Regieleki. But the Groudon, of course, does do a little bit of damage to itself. That is going to be the last Vine Lash, though, because that was the turn after the Dynamax had ended. But, of course, the Groudon exceptionally low. I think, yes, you don't want to get caught with the Electro Web, but Chinwei, to be honest there, just easing up a little bit on the pressure that was being applied, just allowing the Venusaur to go down free of charge. Would have liked to see a little bit more coming out of the Zacian there as well. That said, Intimidate down onto the Groudon to make it more manageable after that early Sword Stance that it's set up to deal with the earliest Intimidate on the board. Brings it back to neutral and definitely leaves it vulnerable. So maybe that play was just Chinwei accepting that Venusaur wasn't exactly what he wanted after those Gigantamax turns had been completed.
Really interesting decision that Jira has to make here, and that is, trying to predict what Chinwei is going to target. Looks like Jira might have called this right. Gonna go ahead and remove the Zacian from the field. Chinwei sending Grimmsnarl out in its place. Regieleki is able to get away with this Protect. And Groudon goes for the Precipice Blades. Does not connect onto the Zacian that switched out, though. And Grimmsnarl able to hang on. Groudon almost knocking itself out as that Landorus goes for the Earthquake, is going to connect with the Grimmsnarl and the Groudon. They're both going to get knocked out here.
Yeah, I mean, the Grimmsnarl just being sacrificed there, that switch. Kind of unfortunate to be forced for Chinwei. I think would have maybe liked to save that for the end. Maybe try and cause some problems with the Grimmsnarl. But at the same time, the Zacian is way more important. And we can see that Chinwei is prioritizing that just based on how it's been protecting, how it's been switching out. The Zacian, though, probably wants to get in a position to try and just pick up those knockouts as best it can. And the Landorus here, not able to switch out and land and intimidate back onto this Urshifu, which may, depending what moves it's going for, may have been of note. We're down to just the last two for both of these trainers, and it's a lot closer than the game looked early on as Chinwei stormed into this early advantage, which just hasn't been able to put the finishing touch on this game. And Jira honestly playing the end game really, really nicely here.
Absolutely weaving through Chinwei's attacks and strategies, and Jira has still held on to something incredibly important, and that just very well could be the finishing touches to this game number 2. As Regieleki gets the Dynamax factor. We're about to see a big bouncing ball of energy on the field right now.
Hey, holding on to that has been something that Jira may have just known as been a win condition from the end. These Max Lightning's going to hurt so much. Regieleki is so unbelievably powerful, and you can't play safe in front of the Urshifu. The Urshifu will punish you if you try to protect, so knowing about that, this Regieleki is just free to target down whatever it wants, use its speed to its advantage, and in that case, just remove the Zacian.
Surging Strikes as well coming out from the Urshifu will be able to connect onto the Landorus, and looks like 3 hits are going to be plenty to be able to knock out this Pokemon, and that should do it. Jira tying up the series.
That's the game, taking it 1-1. I thought after the early turns, Jira was really in trouble there. Really looked behind the pace, was taking so much residual damage between turns. The Groudon was getting weak. The Groudon really didn't do much. And then it ended up just coming down to the Pokemon in the back. It was Regieleki, it was Urshifu. The threat of Urshifu meant Chinwei had to go for it and got punished for it with a huge Max Lightning and then just follow up Surging Strike. So really nicely done. Really well mapped out game from Jira, seeing really far into the future about how this game was going to be won.
And then we've got another game 3 on our hands to settle who's moving forward and whose run is going to be cut short here in the global exhibition. It's close, Adam. I feel like both of these players, and obviously all 8 of the players that are here participating in the global exhibition, are some of the finest VGC players in Pokemon. But these two, they're putting on a real good show for us, and I can't just wait to get into this game number 3. Let's see who takes it all right now, as Jira and Chinwei both tied 1 apiece moving into this 3rd and final game. Chinwei leading with the Landorus and the Venusaur, and Jira once again setting up the sun for that Venusaur with that drought ability.
Yep, giving it right back over as soon as the Groudon takes the field. But that's exactly what happened in the last game. And, you know, while Chinwei was able to use that early doors, able to apply some nice pressure with it, get across that G-Max Vine Lash down, kind of didn't keep that momentum going, and that's what cost him the game in the end. So having to look at a different long-term game plan. I don't think the early turns were the problem at all. It's those longer, drawn-out turns that you have to be thinking about. Maybe don't switch the Landorus out. You know, the Landorus left the field and you know, was a little bit worried. Maybe trying to save itself for later, but the Landorus is limited in options. That said, the Landorus is just leaving.
I don't really mind that play too much because Chinwei can preserve that Landorus's Intimidate ability just to continue to cycle it in. And you can also bring in that Zacian, get that +1 attack boost. And hopefully you have another plan up your sleeve to be able to preserve that Zacian, as we are going to see this Venusaur Gigantamax and hopefully be able to make use of this sun that has been gifted over by Jira's Groudon.
Gotta do something with it because it's not going to be there forever, and it doesn't look like Chinwei has been bringing his own option to set the sun. Max Ooze, though, I like this mix-up. Just being able to put down big damage into that Clefairy and make the follow-up G-Max Vine Lashes even more potent. So definitely trying to go for it a little bit more there. But Groudon, once again, weaves in the Swords Dance. I think this is maybe mapping out the next turn a little bit differently. Get the Max Ooze down now, and then try and land some big attacks to follow things up. You know, you can deal with the Clefairy with the Behemoth Blade, then you can deal with the Groudon more comfortably with the special attack boosted G-Max Vine Lash.
For sure, and especially when you have Clefairy still hanging on through that Max Ooze, it can go very safely and very comfortably for this Follow Me, be able to draw that attention away from that Groudon that just got that Swords Dance boost. It is only going to be at +1 because the Intimidate coming in from the Landorus, but that's still plenty to be able to do what it needs to do. Chinwei, though, kind of recognizing this might not be the best position I want to be in, cycling in an Intimidate again just to get rid of the other +1 boost from that Swords Dance on that Groudon.
And avoid a Precipice Blades as well. So this is double bubble, really. Not getting caught with the Precipice Blades and getting an Intimidate down. Landorus is a perfect switch in here. Clefairy once again becomes the center of attention. That Groudon only needed one bit of help from Icy Wind to try and land that Precipice Blades before the Venusaur gets to move. Good knowledge for Jira and how the team is built. The G-Max Vine Lash is here. Yes, it goes into Clefairy, but it's going to start racking up on this Groudon and whatever comes in to replace the Clefairy too.
I think that was a really critical survival, though. The Max Ooze was great because it did a lot of damage to that Clefairy, but it didn't secure the knockout that Chinwei was really hoping to get. That way, Jira could still go for the Follow Me, make sure that Groudon was going to be very safe from a G-Max Vine Lash, and it's still dishing out tons of damage even though it's at, you know, neutral attack.
Well, I think what's interesting here, though, is just how impactful that Icy Wind has been. You know, that turn 1 Icy Wind, foregoing the Follow Me, and that's something that's really tough to do against Follow Me Pokemon. You can't just ignore them, you know, and pretend they're not there, because if you throw an attack that gets pulled by Follow Me that's not very effective, or doesn't have the after effects that you want, you can end up in a really bad position. But now, I mean, that Venusaur, yeah, it's the last turn of its Gigantamax. It really wants to be able to capitalize here as much as possible, but it's just not going to have that opportunity to do so. It's going to be moving after the Regieleki, after the Groudon, and the Groudon, with the Precipice Blades, even after its attack's been brought back to neutral, is going to be able to handle it. That now puts the pressure on, of course, the Landorus over on Chinwei's side of the field. The Landorus isn't threatened by the Regieleki. It's not really threatened by the Groudon either. So it is going to be a whole lot of questions being asked of this Landorus and how much it can do.
I still don't think this game is completely over yet. We do have a lot of different ways that both of these players have shown in our previous games can just weave in and out of the other players' strategies. Jira, though, still has access to that Dynamax, and so we will get a chance to see the Dynamax Groudon coming into the fold. And hey, you know what? If it works, it works. So let's go ahead and see what this Dynamax Groudon is going to be able to bring to the table here.
It's going to be able to bring a guaranteed hit. You don't have to worry about Precipice Blades missing when you move on over to those max moves. Of course, it's not going to be able to hit landing into the max guard, but the follow-up turn doesn't have to worry about that max Quake missing. Again, though, how much can this Landorus do? It would have loved to be hitting that Regieleki, but the Groudon's going to be the only thing getting hit by it as well. Not really that much damage going down onto it. Regieleki, though, being chunked out by the G-Max Vine Lash, and the Groudon taking a little bit too. Fortunately, not as much as if it hadn't Dynamaxed.
Venusaur's Gigantamax is over now, and still, we're feeling the effects of that Icy Wind from earlier on Chinwei's Pokemon. Just not being able to take advantage, or as much advantage, of the Chlorophyll ability as that Venusaur would like. And now I feel like Jira really is in a particularly good position where they still have Dynamax left. So we are going to see Chinwei actually remove the Venusaur from the field and bring in the Grimmsnarl instead in preparation for what comes next.
Well, what comes next is a Volt Switch, and I think it's way better that the Grimmsnarl takes that than the Venusaur, which would have been felled pretty much immediately. So a good switch there for Chinwei, keeping things going. But that does give a pivot and a reveal of the fourth and final Pokemon for Jira. This adaptation's really, really nice from Jira, though. Not going for the Max Quake anymore, going after that Landorus.
Yeah, the Max Rockfall is going to be able to change the weather and also deal a lot of damage to that Landorus, but the Earthquake comes through. Groudon's still going to be able to hang on from that, but that Grimmsnarl does get knocked out as quickly as it came onto the field.
Been a bit fast and loose with these Earthquakes, just losing your Grimmsnarl to them 2 games in a row. Yes, the Landorus has been a big impactful Pokemon in previous formats, but this time it seems to be really struggling to get a foothold in the game. You now just can't Earthquake for the rest of the game, and I don't know if I like bringing Landorus with the addition of the Venusaur. I don't mind them together as a pairing, but the problem is you can only Dynamax or Gigantamax one of them. Now, when you don't give that to the Landorus, we see, yes, the residual damage from Venusaur is great, but then we see the problems of the Earthquake, and this, you can't Earthquake next to the Venusaur, you can't Earthquake next to the Zacian as well. So maybe Landorus doesn't quite fit in on this team. They spent a lot of time definitely struggling to really make its stamp on the game, and I think that is going to be a big problem as Landorus, has to leave right now.
It's going to be the Venusaur coming back in. That means that Landorus is just going to be waiting in the wings here as Jira does go for a Max Guard onto the Groudon and an Aqua Jet coming out. Venusaur's going to take that pretty well, and as we see the Behemoth Blade also come out from the Zacian on Chinwei's board, not going to be able to get through because of the Max Guard that the Groudon went for this turn.
Now, the Max Guard causing some problems. That's definitely going to be adding up. Both the Pokemon on Jira's side are very, very low, and this could cause a really interesting endgame. The Icy Wind was problematic earlier, but now the Landorus is safe. The Landorus hasn't been Icy Winded. There's no easy way to deal with it. And the Regieleki's in the back as well. So I like what happened right at the beginning of that turn, where Chinwei just switched out the Landorus. The Venusaur coming in, taking more damage is annoying. But at the same time, it saves that Landorus for later. And even though I was just saying the Landorus is struggling, I think Landorus throwing Earthquakes could be important if it's just your win con. If you're just taking out everything, you're moving first, you're knocking it out, great. Good for you, Landorus. You've just got to be careful about it, and you really want it to come down to maybe just a 1v1 versus this Regieleki. Just deal with the Urshifu and Groudon as best you can now, and then go from there.
But I think that's what Jira is calculating right now, is that Jira cannot be in a position where they are 1v1 versus a Landorus and they have a Regieleki, right? You don't want to be in that position. So you are going to see Jira played a little bit safer. Do preserve the Groudon, as we do see a Behemoth Blade now coming out from Chinwei Zacian, which is going to find its mark onto the Regieleki that just switched in. And that does give a bit of an opening for Jira to bring back in that Groudon.
But I mean, the Groudon.
Yeah, at what cost?
The Groudon's going to get intimidated late game as well. Urshifu getting buffeted by the Sandstorm, going to get caught next turn. Yeah, the Sandstorm's coming through and dealing that bit of damage. But the Regieleki, needed to deal with the Venusaur, needed to deal with the Zacian. And just switching into that Behemoth Blade, not going to be able to get that one. I think the Landorus should be able to tidy it up. Oh, the Drought takes away the Sandstorm. So Urshifu does stick around to do a little bit more. But it also means that the Surging Strikes, the Aqua Jet, just not going to be as impactful as, if you're looking to deal with the Landorus that way, the Sun certainly not helping that cause.
The Aqua Jet is going to come through. Oh, it doesn't do anything to that Venusaur. Venusaur able to fire back with a Sludge Bomb, knocking out that Urshifu. And for Jira, it is just the Groudon versus the world. Doesn't even get a chance to move, though, because Chinwei is going to be able to land this Behemoth Blade and knock out this Groudon. 2-1 victory to Chinwei for this first losers round number 1.
That game went a little bit differently. That was one of the slower games I think we've seen today, and